Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Meet the DM Drug Developer webinar series. Welcome to our second event this year, and we are very fortunate to host today Avidity Biosciences and their presentation entitled Global Phase 3 Harbor Study and Long-Term MARINA Open Label Extension Data Sharing. First, a little bit about the Myotonic Dystrophy Foundation. Our vision is, of course, that we see a world with treatments and a cure for myotonic dystrophy. Our mission is community, care, and cure. So we support and connect the myotonic dystrophy community. We provide resources and advocate for care, and we accelerate research towards treatments and a cure. We provide a lot of resources and support, and most of these things you can find on our website at myotonic.org. So on this site, you find resources like the toolkits and publications. So these are resources for care providers and families, and they include anesthesia guidelines, the MDF toolkits, and clinical care recommendations. We support groups. These support groups are led by trained community volunteers, and these programs create safe spaces to network, learn, and share. Our website also hosts a digital academy. There you can see hours of educational and inspirational videos by DM experts on demand, and that's also the site where ultimately today's presentation will be available for sharing and reviewing. And then most importantly, it's also the site of our calendar, our event calendars, where you find all information about upcoming support groups, conferences, webinars, and more. And one more time, all of this you can find at myotonic.org. So in 2024, we transition from an annual conference in the fall to an annual conference in the spring. Our next conference, the next big annual conference, will be in 2025. And this year, we are trying something new. We are trying to come to you. So we are holding 6 regional conferences. The first conference is next week in Gainesville, Florida, and that event is amazingly completely sold out. Then on April 6th, we'll be in Boston, April 20th in Iowa City. On May 4th, we'll be in Houston. Then on May 18th in Los Angeles, and we conclude the series on June 1 in Seattle. Please sign up. It's cool. The events will be amazing, and they will allow you, the community, to connect with regional resources and care providers. So let's talk a little bit, let's set the stage for drug development efforts in myotonic dystrophy. And when I think about drug development, I think about parallels to my next slide, to my favorite sport and my favorite soccer team in Germany. And when I introduced this analogy in January, I introduced to you also Harry Kane. He's the forward for Munich, and he plays for the British national team. And at that time, he had 55 shots on goal and 19 goals. When we look today, so next slide, he has 115 shots and 30 goals. So again, what are the parallels? So parallel number 1, we need to take go back one more time. We need to take shots on goals to score goals. We need to shoot on goals from varying positions, and you can see he was even successful with long shots where he kicked the ball on goal from clearly from the midfield area. So these are really important parallels, and there our community is very, very fortunate. We counted it up, and we have, I think, 9 programs now that are in advanced clinical trials. Next. So clinical trial activities, they can be broadly categorized into 4 areas, and they follow next. they follow the central dogma of biology. So that starts with DNA, and the DNA harbors our genes. And then we have a process that's called transcription. And in this process, RNA is generated. Because of the expanded repeats, the generated RNA misfolds. It generates these hairpin structures. They are toxic, and they act as traps for, and they recruit important cellular proteins. And when these proteins are not available for the job they normally do, we have cellular dysfunction, and we have all kinds of effects that go wrong. So the broad areas where we have drug discovery programs focus on the inhibition of transcription and gene editing. Then we have inactivation of toxic RNA. We have programs that try to compensate for those trapped proteins that are binding on these hairpin structures. And then we have also discovery efforts that broadly try to compensate for this cellular dysfunction. A few brief comments on DM1 versus DM2 programs. So while we have a lot more activity for DM1, we believe the lessons learned from DM1 program, they are either directly or indirectly applicable for DM2 as well. So when we look at program step number 2, what we learn of inhibiting the interfering with the toxic hairpin formation, this could be important for DM2 as well. We have different hairpin, but structurally probably similar. And then the compensation for trap proteins and broad compensation for cellular dysfunction. There is some indication that some of these programs might also be applicable for DM2. Next. So Avidity Biosciences, who presents today, they are focusing on the inactivation of toxic RNA. So before we hand over the presentation now to the Avidity team, I would like to make introductions. We are fortunate to hear today from Sarah Boyce. She is the president and CEO and a member of the board of directors for Avidity Biosciences. She has extensive operational, commercial, and leadership experience in the life sciences industry, and she has a track record of building global organizations, bringing a number of innovative therapies to patients. Then we'll hear from Dr. Li Tai. She's the executive director in clinical development, and Li has more than 10 years of experience as a medical monitor and clinical developer on interventional trials. Before that, Li also did basic research, and she took care of patients as an attending physician at the VA hospital in San Diego. Then we hear from Kath Gallagher. She's the vice president and global program head for myotonic dystrophy type 1. She also has a wealth of experience, more than 20 years in the biopharmaceutical industry, leading communications and investor relations in preclinical and as well as commercial stage companies. Last but not least, we are fortunate to hear today from Dr. John Day, and I don't think I need to introduce him to this community. John is a professor of neurology, pediatrics, and pathology, and the director of the Division of Neuromuscular Medicine at Stanford University. Dr. Day received his medical degree from the University of Minnesota and a PhD in neuroscience from the Albert Einstein College of Medicine. And after completing his neurology and neuromuscular training at the University of California, San Francisco, he went to Minnesota, where as the professor of neurology, pediatrics, and genetics, he directed the Paul and Sheila Wellstone Muscular Dystrophy Center. And then in 2011, he came to Stanford and established the comprehensive division of neuromuscular medicine. And John is absolutely amazing as a clinician and as a leader and as a mentor in neuromuscular medicine. So now, a few housekeeping items. You can all ask questions live. We are not going to answer them right away. We'll try to group questions and combine them with the pre-submitted questions at the end of the presentation. So now, without further ado, let's welcome Avidity Biosciences and really enjoy their presentation.
Thank you so much, Andy, for the introduction. My name is Sarah Boyce. I'm the CEO at Avidity Biosciences. It is truly a deep pleasure to be with you today as we talk about the work that we're making in transforming myotonic dystrophy. We are deeply grateful for being part of this community, and in particular for the role that the Myotonic Dystrophy Foundation plays and continues to play. Today, we're going to be focused on the global phase 3 study, which is called HARBOR, as well as looking at the long-term safety and efficacy results from the MARINA open label extension study. We can move to the next slide, please. During the course of this presentation, we will be making what's called forward-looking statements. Avidity is a publicly traded company. We're traded on the NASDAQ. And as part of that, it is important that we share what forward-looking statements are. And essentially, they're like educated guesses based on what we know, but they are not sure things. One thing I would remind you of is that the statements in this presentation are not promises. What actually happens might be different because a lot of unexpected changes can come up. And also, don't rely too heavily on these statements and the statements that we'll make because actual results could vary or could be different. If we can go to the next slide, please. As I said, we're very grateful for the many contributions and really important contributions that have paved the way for the MARINA open label extension study clinical trial. We've leveraged so much important knowledge and progress during this journey, both through the network of advocates, experts, in both sharing their knowledge and tools. And these include the Myotonic Dystrophy Clinical Research Network, the establishment of the biomarkers and clinical endpoints in myotonic dystrophy type 1 and DM1 study, patient advocacy organizations, and also, more importantly, the communities of patients, families, and caregivers. It's also really important for me to note that while the discussion today is very much focused on myotonic dystrophy type 1, we really do believe that all of this learnings, expertise, and knowledge can hopefully ultimately also benefit those people living with myotonic dystrophy type 2. We can go to the next slide, please. I really want to make sure that we take a moment to thank each study participant, their families, the investigators, and their teams for giving what is the most precious gift anyone can give in life, which is that of their time, the commitment, and the continued contributions to both the MARINA and the MARINA open label extension studies. We simply wouldn't be here today without this. And if we can go to the next slide, please. So a little bit about Avidity. We are deeply committed to improving lives of people impacted by diseases, including myotonic dystrophy. And the role that we play as part of that is through the development of new drugs. With regards to those new drugs, what we're going to be focusing on today, if we can go to the next slide, please, is our investigational drug, which was formerly known as AOC1001. Now, as part of that, or as part of as drugs develop, there is a stage where they receive what's called a generic name. The generic name is given by the World Health Organization, and we now have a generic name, which is delpacibart etedesiran. The delpacibart refers to the monoclonal antibody. So that is the 3-arm loose structure that you see. And the etidisiran refers to the siRNA, which is the squiggly, I'm getting technical here, the squiggly structure that you see that is red and orange. The shortened name, because let's face it, delpacibart etidisiran is rather a mouthful, is del-desiran, and we will refer to that throughout this presentation. And if we can go to the next slide, please. So what are we going to be talking about in terms of the next phase of our journey to improve people's lives, to improve the lives of people affected by myotonic, by DM1? Big focus today is the HARBOR study, which is a phase 3, or what's called a pivotal study. This is a really important phase in drug development, and we're planning to initiate that study in between June and April of this year. We'll also be sharing with you the data from the MARINA open label extension study as well. And if we go way back, we'll recall that the MARINA phase 1/2 study was initiated in 2020. We'll also, in the green box here, is the NDM1 study. The NDM1 study is what's called a natural history study. This is not an Avidity study. This is a study that it is owned by the NDM1 study group, and you'll hear more about that during the course of this presentation. And if we can go to the next slide, please. So what do we plan to share with you today? Firstly is the advances in the understanding of DM1. We'll share the promising long-term data from the MARINA open label extension study, and also the launch of the pivotal phase in our program for DM1. Also along how partnership with the DM community, patients, advocates, healthcare providers has been essential in this key milestone, and you'll really hopefully see that. And also a reflection on the importance of the contributions that study participants have made to improve care and advance potential treatments for DM1. And I hope that you will also hear and see and feel the urgency and commitment that we have around improving the lives of those who are impacted by DM1. And if we can go to the next slide, please, which gives you our little agenda for today. My colleague, Dr. Li-Jung, is going to share with you the Global HARBOR Phase 3 study. Professor Day will take you through the MARINA open label extension study results. And that study continues to progress, which is why it's called in progress. And then Kath Gallagher will talk about the work in transforming the future of DM1 and the work that we'll do together. With that, I would like to introduce my colleague, Dr. Li-Jung, to you, and she'll be talking more about the HARBOR study. Li, over to you.
Thank you, Sarah. Hi, everyone. I am Li-Jung. I have been working on the del-desiran program for the last 3 years. Today is really my honor to represent the MARINA and MARINA open label extension teams to tell you about our next trial. First, I really want to echo what Sarah has said, which is that we really need to thank many of you as participants of the patient registries and natural history studies, such as the NDM1 study, and also for being advocates for the DM1 community. You're really the most important partner and collaborator in the development of treatment for patients with DM1. As you will hear from Dr. Day later on, the data from the natural history study and the MARINA trials have really been critical and important for us to understand what del-desiran can do. And this is the foundation from which the HARBOR trial is built on. So today I'm very excited to share with you our next step in making a new potential therapy broadly available to those living with DM1. Let's go to the next slide. So as you know, drug development generally starts with small trials, and then based on the data, bigger trials can then be performed. In our case, this will be the HARBOR study. The HARBOR study is a phase 3 trial. Phase 3 trials are also called pivotal studies. They are crucial for confirming the effectiveness and assessing the safety of the drug. Data generated from the HARBOR trial will be the most important data that regulators such as the FDA will evaluate for whether the drug can be approved and become available to the DM1 community. I'd like to use this slide to describe the design of the HARBOR trial. We analyzed the data from NDM1, MARINA trial, and MARINA open-label extension study to understand the change in clinical status of participants after treatment. So this way we can then calculate how big a trial we need to have and how long the trial needs to be. Based on this, we have determined that the HARBOR trial size will be 150 in number of participants at about 40 sites in multiple countries. Also, based on our data from MARINA, we're excited to be able to expand access to younger people living with DM1 by decreasing the age range to 16 years and older. Our team has been working to set up this trial, and we are aiming to start HARBOR between April and June of this year. The treatment period for HARBOR is 54 weeks, which will provide long-term safety data. But we'll also be assessing how the drug is working, especially at 30 weeks. At this time point, we will assess the clinical status of the participants across several measures, and this will allow us to start our interaction with the FDA toward regulatory approval. Participants will be randomized 1-to-1 to get either del-desiran at 4 milligrams per kilogram every 8 weeks or placebo. This means that 50% of the participants will receive del-desiran and 50% will receive placebo for 54 weeks. Following this, all eligible participants will have access to receive del-desiran in an open-label extension study, just like the MARINA open-label extension trial that is ongoing. Next slide. In the HARBOR trial, we plan to study similar endpoints like we did in MARINA and MARINA open-label extension. And Dr. Day will be discussing these endpoints in more detail. But just want to let you know that the first endpoint will be the amount of time it takes for the hand to open. And this is shown on the left panel. For secondary endpoints, we will look at the muscle strength of the hand and several other muscle groups. We'll also look at participant questionnaire to understand how participants feel over time. We're committed to keep the DM1 community informed as we have additional information to share about how to participate in the HARBOR study. And we will be posting additional details regarding eligibility and clinical trial site locations on clinicaltrials.gov. And we will also notify our patient advocacy partners, including the Myotonic Dystrophy Foundation, once it is posted. This concludes the update on the HARBOR trial. I will pass the presentation now to Dr. Day to discuss the in-progress MARINA open-label extension study results.
Thanks so much, Lee, Dr. Tai. It's really exciting to be here and to discuss the results of the MARINA open-label study today. If you go to the next slide, I think it's worthwhile reiterating, I'm very proud to be a member of the Myotonic Dystrophy Foundation board, as Dr. Rohrwasser mentioned. In that role, I'm very supportive of all the shots on goal. We really want to see everything work, and consequently are very excited by everything that's going on in the field. Stanford is also a very proud member of the Myotonic Dystrophy Clinical Research Network and has been very involved in the development of that. And so we're also quite proud members of that entity and the great work that it's been doing, as I'll mention later on. But today I'm really here to talk about our role as one of the members of the overall MARINA study group, including investigators and evaluators at multiple sites around the United States who have been participating in this important initial study of AOC 1001, or del-desiran for myotonic dystrophy. If we go to the next slide, I'm not telling anybody in this audience anything new, that myotonic dystrophy is a very, very complex entity. It does affect the muscle, obviously, that's where it gets its name,
but it affects many, many other organ systems as well. And it affects every individual differently. So it's very hard to conceptualize coming up with a trial that's going to reliably determine whether or not a treatment is working in all of the ways that we would hope it would work. So we have to pick one to be a representative and clinically important entity to study. The next slide actually drills down on this a little bit further, where we can see all of the different kinds of ways that an individual may or may not be affected by myotonic dystrophy, and increases the complexity of the picture that we're trying to address. And thus, how do we do a trial? There are many ways that a trial can fail a drug, not just that a drug can fail a trial. And consequently, we wanted to come up with a way that would allow us to determine quite precisely and accurately whether or not del-desiran was having a beneficial effect. And in that regard, we have focused primarily here on muscle, though we are very optimistic that del-desiran is affecting many, many other organ systems as well. In terms of muscle effects, I'm going to mention a little bit more the myotonia. I think that this community is well aware of what myotonia is, that inability to rapidly relax muscle, where muscle relaxes much more slowly. And oftentimes we think about its effects in the hand, and that's in part because it's obvious there. You can see it there, you can measure it there, we can quantify it there. And so that's a very useful site that myotonia can be measured and used in a clinical trial like the MARINA study. We're also obvious of its effects on the tongue, and it can affect chewing, or it can affect swallowing or speech. Those are places where myotonia is most obvious, but it's important to realize that myotonia actually affects all of the muscles in the body. So myotonia is ongoing continually, and consequently can affect the performance of an individual with myotonic dystrophy in many ways. Because of the myotonia in the back muscles or the thigh or hip or leg muscles, it's possible that the muscles might be stiffer, or that might affect strength or might affect stamina. And consequently, we do believe that myotonia has many effects beyond the ones that we can most accurately measure in the hand, and we think it's clinically an important measure for us to monitor. We've been doing that monitoring, as evidenced in the next slide, as part of this ongoing natural history study, and I really want to emphasize the point that Sarah made of how important it is for people in the community to participate in research, not just in the study trials, but in the natural history study. As you'll see, we have ongoing natural history studies. We have more that we need to learn about myotonic dystrophy so that we can design trials that don't fail drugs in upcoming studies as well. So the NDM1 natural history study has been following a large group of patients in sites around the world, actually, that are coordinated and working together and doing things in the same way so that we can determine what the typical presentation of myotonic dystrophy is and how patients tend to progress with their symptoms during the course of the disease. We're learning new ways to measure those functions. We're learning new ways to kind of assess what that rate of progression is going to be. And that gives us the data that we need to develop specific and meaningful and useful and accurate clinical trials. If you go to the next slide, you can see additional information about this important NDM1 study. So this, as was mentioned, is not a study to measure effects of drug, but it's a way of assessing what the effects of the myotonic dystrophy are so that we can then measure the effects of drug relative to this natural history. It involves a large number of patients over many sites around the world, and it has been organized and run by the Myotonic Dystrophy Clinical Research Network and obviously supported by the Myotonic Dystrophy Foundation, along with the MDA, FDA, as well as Avidity and other sponsors. So it's really, really critical, and we really want to thank everyone who's helped us with the NDM1 study, in addition to those who have been able to participate and help us with the MARINA trial. If we go forward again, you can see part of the reason why this is so important. All of the sites that have participated in the clinical trials for MARINA have also been NDM1 sites. And as a consequence, all of the investigators and evaluators and coordinators at those sites are very experienced in doing these studies. We use the same endpoints, so we know how to do it, we know what to expect. And because of that, we're getting a rich contemporary data set for the natural history against which we can then compare the results of this clinical trial of del-desiran. If you go to the next slide, we can see some of the goals then of this MARINA trial and then of its extension in the open label extension part of the trial that we're currently underway and continuing to extend. So that the goal primarily has been to determine the safety and tolerability of del-desiran, but also to determine its effects on some of those key elements such as myotonia and strength, while determining just how much, what kind of dose we need to use and how frequently we need to administer it. So a lot of data has been accumulated during the MARINA and MARINA open label studies. As many of you know, there was a serious adverse event in September of 2022 in a single individual, and that put the study on clinical hold for a period of time. And as a consequence of that, now that under a partial hold, we are still able to dose patients, and we're increasing every patient in the open label extension up to that target dose of 4 milligrams per kilogram. So we're getting everyone in the open label extension up to the same dose that we'll be studying in the Harbor trial and measuring the effects on safety and tolerability and efficacy as this open label extension goes forward. Importantly, on the next slide, you can see some of the results of this open label extension. So in all 37 patients who have stayed on the treatment, they have all remained in the study. No one has dropped out because of any serious or concerning side effect from the drug. As you can see, many patients have some kind of adverse event. That is very, very common and expected in all trials. And the vast majority of those are completely unrelated to the treatment. So if you get a cold, that's an adverse event. If you stub your toe, that's an adverse event. I mean, so everything gets recorded and reported when you're in a clinical trial. There have been a few that have been related to the study drug, but those have not been significant. They've been more in the line of some transient headaches or nausea that we have reported, but there have been no serious adverse events related to the study drug. And as I mentioned, none have led to patients dropping out. There have been a few serious adverse events that occurred to patients during the trial, but those are related to their underlying myotonic dystrophy, such as the development of gallstones or something like that, and show no relationship to the del-desiran. So we think it's safe and tolerable and are excited to see this moving forward. Now, looking at some of the data, let's go to the next slide. And here, as I mentioned, are the results of the NDM1 trial. So this is very exciting. So those of you who have participated in NDM1 can see the benefits or the data from your participation. If we look in the top box there, you can see the quantification of the myotonia, or this video hand opening time. It measures myotonia. And interestingly, if we look at the change over 1 year for all this large group of patients with myotonic dystrophy, there was actually a very small change in the length of time of myotonia in that patient population between their baseline and year 1 measurements, but very, very little difference. It actually, in this instance, improves slightly, but did not show much of a change. And similarly, if we look at the quantitative motor testing, we saw very little overall change. Obviously, some patients got a little bit worse, some patients got a little bit better, but on average, there was no significant change. That's that QMT composite. In the hand grip, we do see a little bit of a decline. Many of you are aware that the hand grip is one of the sites that's earliest affected in myotonic dystrophy. And you can see there's a little bit of a drop-off in patients in the natural history study. And then the DM1 active measures the ability of people to perform typical activities of daily living. And that also declined somewhat over the period of a year for this group of patients. So this is critically important data that shows us what we would expect in patients if they got no treatment. And against that now, we can compare the results of the patients who have been in the open label extension of the MARINA study in the next trial. So after a year in that trial on 4 milligrams per kilogram, the target dose, we can see an improvement in all of those measures. So we can see an improvement in the video hand opening time. Their myotonia got better. We can see improvement in their strength. We can see improvement in their grip, and we can see improvement in their ability to perform activities of daily living. That is really strong, good evidence that there is a clinically significant benefit to the use of del-desiran in these patients at that dose over a period of a year. We can drill down a little bit more on that in the next slide, where we can look at that effect on myotonia. So again, this is this quantified measure of hand opening time. It's done in a controlled way where we take a video and a neutral party actually looks at it, so they don't know who has gotten del-desiran and who hasn't. And we can see that during the MARINA trial, those who did not get it, those who got placebo, stayed pretty much the same. There wasn't a big change in that gray line going across the 180 days of the MARINA trial, whereas those who did get 4 milligrams per kilogram had a definite improvement in their myotonia during that time. And then during the open label extension, that has continued. So that's really good evidence that we're on the right track in terms of defining and demonstrating a benefit from this treatment. If you go to the next slide, you can actually see this. Many of you have seen earlier videos of this video hand opening time, and now you can see the results after having been on the treatment for a full year. So if you can play the videos, we can actually see this.
Ready? And squeeze, 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 and open.
So, I mean, it's really quite dramatic. Now, obviously, this is one individual's response. I mean, and this is one of the better ones, to be frank, but it shows a definite improvement. And I think that is really good news that there is a significant change here. And if we saw those graphs earlier, you can see that the average also improved. So we have very good confidence that this is having a benefit on the cause of the myotonia. Again, we're measuring it in the hand grip time, but we are confident because of the mechanism of action here, as Dr. Rohrwasser went over in his early slides. Because of the mechanism of action of the treatment, we are optimistic that we are affecting myotonia throughout the body, not just in the hand. And if we go forward to the next slide, we can see some of those benefits of affecting myotonia here in grip strength, not just in hand opening time, where if we look at the results of hand grip strength for those who received 4 milligrams per kilogram in the MARINA trial, it definitely improved, whereas the placebo kind of hovered around zero change during that first 6-month period. And during the open label extension, that strength persisted or even might have improved a little bit, but certainly stayed at the same level. And if we go to the next slide, we can see that that was also seen when we looked at this composite of all of these muscle strength measurements at the elbow movements in flexion and extension, knee measurements in flexion and extension, and ankle dorsiflexion movements, and put those together, we see a very similar curve where there's an improvement in force if you're on 4 milligrams per kilogram during the MARINA trial, and that persists during the time that you're in the open label extension. So all of these are really good signs that this is working the way we intended. And if you look at the next slide, you can see that that translates, we believe, into evidence of improvement or maintenance of function in terms of activities of daily living using this patient-reported outcome measurements of how they're doing, so that there's a stability or improvement in function in terms of that measure during MARINA, and that is maintained. So this is really exciting data. And on the next slide, we can see the summary of that. We think this is a very promising long-term safety and tolerability profile, and that we're seeing evidence of improvement and long-lasting changes in terms of muscle function. So with that conclusion, we come to the hopeful end that we are excited about moving into the phase 3 Harbor trial and moving that forward to see if we can further validate the improvements of del-desiran in terms of tackling the root cause of myotonic dystrophy and helping treat muscle, but other elements of the disease as well. And at that, I'm going to pass it off to Kath to talk a little bit more about that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Day. Thank you for sharing all of that and sharing your insights. And really, I want to just take a moment to thank the whole NDM1 Physician Network. They've done so much to further the research in this field. And, we're just so grateful to all of them, as we are to all of you listening in today and to the patient community as a whole. So Dr. Day was able to share the data, and, they are beautiful graphs and I love seeing them. But, what do these graphs really mean is the question. And, given that the MARINA open label extension study is open label, and what that means is that all participants are being treated and they know they're being treated with del-desiran. So given that, we had the opportunity to ask some of the participants on the MARINA open label extension study to bring their experience, to share their experience, which will kind of bring hopefully some of this data to life. So what I'm going to ask, what we're going to do next is we are going to play 3 quotes from 3 different participants in the MARINA open label extension study. And just as a reminder, these are only these patients' experiences. Others may not experience the same thing or may not have the same results or may have different positive or negative experiences as well. But it is really important to have the opportunity to really show what these changes that you just saw in graphs, how they actually impact people living with the disease that were on the MARINA open label extension study. So with that, Alyssa, I'm going to ask you to please go to the next slide and play our first quote.
I started this drug in June, and like 2 weeks after I took the first infusion, I went to open up a pop bottle, which I never would have been able to do. It was a twist pop bottle, and it opened right up. My strength was better. My outlook was better. My hands were working. That I had more strength and I could stretch them out. I could open things and I could turn doorknobs and all these things that were harder. Like my upper arm strength was better. I could walk better. I didn't need to wear my neck brace all the time. Everything just improved a lot.
Thanks so much. You really can't be spoken better than in the words of our participants. So with that, I'll ask you to go to the next one as well, please.
Before the study, I couldn't stand on my toes. And since I've been going back to working out, I can actually stand on my toes again. So I'm hopefully building up some strength. Myotonia, if I would make a fist, I wouldn't be able to open my hand. I was able to squeeze my fist and open my hand with no problems. My tongue would cramp up when I would speak, and I have not had any signs of that happening since the very first dose.
Thank you again. And finally, we're going to listen to our last participant quote.
I've noticed a really big difference in the fact that I used to be a really active person before I got more symptomatic. After a few rounds of the infusion, I've actually been able to get back to the gym and start working out, working with a trainer. That's all because my mobility has definitely increased. My range of motion has also increased. I think that it's amazing that when I was diagnosed, I was told there's no treatment, no cure. The study's given me a lot of hope. I would love for that to be able to be shared with other people in the community who have DM1.
Those are three really powerful quotes, and participants hearing their voices talk about the impact of del-desiran that it's had for them. And I want to thank all three of you for your time. I want to thank the investigators that spent time interviewing you. It is so helpful to hear how this impacted them. And as you can hear, they each had different experiences. We had someone talk about their hand function. We had someone talk about strength, mobility, and all of those things underscore the data that Dr. Day was just able to share as well. So it's one thing for us to show the data, but really it's another thing altogether for us to hear from the participants in this study. So next slide, we're just going to talk a little bit about a summary of what you've heard today. So first and foremost, the Harbor study is coming up. It's on track. We're going to be initiating. You're going to hear us say from time to time in Q2, and what that means is April, May, or June 2024. That's the time frame we're planning to initiate in. And I know Lee mentioned this earlier, but please do know we will be sharing information as soon as we have it. We'll be putting it on clinicaltrials.gov. We'll be updating MDF as soon as this study has been initiated, and we'll get the news out there as quickly as we can to the community. We talked about the MARINA and the MARINA open label extension studies and how what we've seen from those is a favorable safety and tolerability profile, both in MARINA and then longer term in the MARINA open label extension study. We've seen improvements in myotonia, hand grip, muscle strength, and mobility in the MARINA study. And then we were able to see that those same things had a consistent and long-lasting improvement in multiple of those measures as participants stayed on drug for longer. And finally, again, just talking about the NDM1 study, when you look at all of these results together, what we saw is that it was a reversal of disease progression for participants that were on del-desiran versus participants that were in the NDM1 natural history study, where they were not given drug and were just their progression was watched over time. So really exciting data, and we're so excited to share it with all of you. If we could go to the next slide, please. I just want to talk a little bit about what's happening next. So as you are likely aware, the MARINA open label extension study is ongoing, and we have a goal of continuing access to del-desiran for all of the study participants while the Harbor study is running as well. And hopefully until at some point we have positive results from the phase 3 study and the drug is out there. All of the participants in the MARINA open label extension study are in the process of being dose escalated from 2 milligrams per kilogram every 13 weeks to 4 milligrams per kilogram every 13 weeks. We are in that process right now. We want to thank you all for for coming in and just working with the study sites to go through that dose escalation. We are also planning to share additional results from the MARINA open label extension study as they become available, and we look forward to sharing more with you. Again, we're going to be initiating Harbor just in the coming months here, April to June 2024. And again, we will continue to partner with MDF and keep you informed about updates as we go. And finally, on this next slide here, it really strikes me as I sit here on the call and I get to listen in today that Sarah, Lee, Dr. Day, and we're so privileged to get to be here today to share this data with all of you. But this data is not our data. It's not Avidity's data. This data is a result of all of us. It's a result of the patients, the families, the participants in the trial, their friends, their advocates, the patient advocacy groups like MDF, the physicians and their teams. This entire community has made these firsts happen for the DM1 community as a whole. And it's such a privilege to get to work with all of you, work with this community to enable these firsts. So, we were able to have our first AOC from the Avidity pipeline was in DM1, and it was the first ever in the field. We were able to show that we could use this technology to actually deliver drug where we wanted to go, which in this case is to the muscle. We were able to show these functional improvements in DM1, and we were able to show the long-term safety and efficacy data for the first time with one of these AOCs as well. And this is really a testament to the entire community and all the work that you've done participating in NDM1, coming, asking questions like you're able to do today, engaging with MDF, engaging with Avidity. We together have really made these firsts happen. And we are so grateful to you. And we're now looking forward to the next first, which, as we spoke with Tanya at MDF and Andy, we're realizing this is the first time that we'll have a study that has 40 sites globally for the DM1 community. And again, it's such a privilege to be part of that journey. So last, we just want to end by thanking everyone. And, I want to show you a picture of, this is the Avidity community. But as I said to you, we really view our community as all of us together. And you get to see our faces. We can't see yours, but I want you to know what an inspiration the DM1 community is to all of us every day. And, Sarah's talked about urgency. There is not a day that goes by that we don't talk about the urgency for this. And everything we do, the discussion is, how can we do it safely but faster? And we are going to continue to do that. We had the privilege of having one of our patients come and speak at Avidity recently. And when we asked her at the end, what advice do you have for us? Her response was, hurry up. And we take that very seriously, and we will continue to. So I want to thank you. We're so grateful for your trust, for your support, and your partnership as we continue to develop del-desiran. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Andy to open up Q&A.
Great. Thank you so much to the entire Avidity team for and of course Dr. Day for this amazing presentation. And it's not just me saying that. I had the privilege to look at questions and comments folks submitted when they registered for the webinar, and there were so many thankful comments. So I think that really illustrates that this is a two-way street. So let's go and let's go into Q&A series of questions. So maybe this question is maybe for Kath and Sarah maybe first. We get many questions. So when is the trial coming to Italy? When is the trial coming to Sweden? When is the trial coming to Salt Lake? When is the trial coming? You name it. We have 20 or so questions of that nature. Do you want to maybe take a step back and talk to the community about this, the general recruitment practice, how this works, how many patients get recruited at what sites and so forth, so people hear directly from you.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm going to start, but Lee, I'm going to hand this one over to you. And what I will say is, I mentioned just a minute ago that this is the first time there's going to be 40 sites in a myotonic dystrophy study. And part of that means we have a responsibility to make sure that the sites we're working with are really well equipped to handle a study like the Harbor study. There's so much that goes into it. We talk about the teams, but we never mentioned some of the physical therapists and all the incredible work that they do to really make these studies happen. So there's a lot we have to look at to ensure that the sites we're going to have the right technology and have the right people on board, so that we are, doing this study justice and making sure that we're putting patients in the right hands as they're going into the Harbor study. So Lee, I'll have you talk a little bit more about that, but that's kind of the overarching thought on this.
Yeah, thank you, Kath. I think Kath is exactly right. We have been very intentional in designing our first phase 3 trial for the DM1 community. And our goal is really to select sites that has the expertise to carry out the trial in the safest and most with the highest standard. And because this is going to be a multinational study with 40 sites, we need to make sure all of the clinical endpoints that Dr. Day just described are done consistently across all sites, and so that our data can really show what the drug can do. So in general, we would start the trial not all at the same time in multiple countries, but we'll be kind of rolling basis, starting sites, and that really depends on several factors, including regulatory and site setting up. But we're really committed to keep all of you informed as we have additional information, and this would include both the eligibility criteria and the site location and country. And we'll be posting this information on clinicaltrials.gov so that they can help you to decide how you can participate.
Great. So thank you. So several questions came in during the webinar. So the total study population is 150, correct? Right. So it's not 150 per site. So we want to be very clear. Maybe let's go to safety. We got a question submitted before the webinar, and then during the webinar when we heard about the adverse event. Maybe that's for Lee, for you, and maybe for Dr. Day. So how is patient safety in general assured during the trials?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Safety is really the pillar of any trial. It's a crucial aspect that we put a lot of thoughts into in terms of designing, figuring out the monitoring, how we monitor for safety. And this relates to, our drug is an infusion, intravenous infusion. So there are safety monitoring during the infusion and after infusion. And then we also have in-between infusion checkups. So all of this is trying to make sure that any safety signal can be captured and can be intervened. So in terms of the specific monitoring rules, there also have regulatory guidance on some of the things that we would do for some of the safety signals. And those are standard practice that we would follow based on regulatory guidance. So I don't know if, John, if you would like to add a little bit more context.
I mean, I think, with regard to that specific event that we all took incredibly seriously, I mean, we were able to look into that as closely as possible, and obviously to increase the monitoring of our patients even more diligently after that, and really have seen no evidence of any recurrence of that consequence. So I think, we're quite positive about the safety results and eager to see this go forward with the results of the MARINA trial and the OLE.
Great, thank you. So let's shift around a little bit, and let's go. We also get many questions with regards to the ultimate approval of a drug and availability on the market. Maybe that's I don't know, maybe Kath or Sarah, that's maybe for you. So maybe you can walk the community through the steps once FDA gives the green light, what are the next steps, and how long does it usually take until a drug is on market?
Sure. So I'm going to kind of start. So, we said that study is being initiated, in the next quarter. What's going to happen then is it's going to take us quite some time to actually enroll those 150 participants. So we talked about this. We're going to start, getting as many sites open as we can. That timeline takes different amounts of time in every country, as well as, even then within the site. Sometimes it can take weeks to get a site up and running. Sometimes it can take months. So we're going to kind of work through all of that in parallel, always with the hurry up mentality in the back of our minds, of course. And so, that will be really the next phase of the Harbor study. Once everyone's been enrolled, then what will happen is we will look at when all of the participants have reached the 30th week of the study. So week 30, we will then look at the data, and then we'll present the top line results. And what top line means is it's kind of like, what are the most important aspects of the study? In this case, it would be the primary endpoint for sure, video hand opening time. It would be some of the key secondaries that we talked about as well for hand grip strength and QMT. So we would share all of that with the world. And then once that happens, assuming that those results are positive, then what we have to go back and do is put together applications for approval. And so these can take differing amounts of times. I've seen some, we have such a sophisticated audience here today. I'm like so impressed with some of the questions that we have gotten. We do have fast track designation for this program. There are different levers FDA can pull when the time comes for us to submit. So we have to go put together a package for FDA and submit that, and then there'll be an approval timeline that they give us for how many months that will take for them to review the package and tell us. In addition, at the same time, we'll be working on those for every country that we have gone to. So, Europe, you do it for the EMA as a whole, but, for instance, the United Kingdom is a different path than what Europe does. So we will be going through all of these steps as fast as we can, but they do take time. And there is a level of diligence that we have to make sure that we take as we go through the submissions for all of these different countries. So hopefully that does help. It's hard to give an exact number, but I mean, we are talking, I guess what I would say is we're talking about, we have a goal to enroll this study in 12 months. We have said that as a company, and that's an aggressive goal because we want to do this as fast as we can. But with that number out there, you can just see that that's just the enrollment time. So it's from there that the rest of the clock starts. Hopefully that helps give some context.
Yes, that's great. So that's perfect. So maybe if you could also speculate, maybe make a few comments. So if everything goes well, and FDA gives the green light, how long does it? We can use maybe historic data or something like that. How long does it take until a drug is in general available for patients globally?
So just one clarification. So the FDA will only be for the US, right?
Yeah.
So within the United States, let's say we got an approval. I mean, I can sit with Sarah's my boss on the phone, and she and I have very high expectations of how that would roll. We'd be talking about days from when we were approval to when we'd be trying to get that drug out there. Is that fair, Sarah? We're not going to, that would be our goal, is we're talking very quickly. And, then though, the real challenge is doing that in all of the different locations globally. Historically, what you do in rare diseases also is some people are able to open up early access programs where you're able to have participants get on the study before it's been approved. And that's certainly something that we will look into as well. Sarah, do you have anything you'd want to add there?
The only thing I would add is that we have an acute sense of urgency, and that comes in everything that we do. We also, patient safety is paramount. Doing things the right way is paramount. and that actually facilitates speed, but the urgency of potential treatments for myotonic dystrophy is not in any way lost on us, and the responsibility that we know we have as part of this community to do our job really, really well, and to move as expeditiously as possible.
I think that's actually a very, very nice summary. So I want to put there are also we see many questions with regards to country-specific access, country-specific trials. Let me put them to rest with the plea to our audience to make sure you are enrolled in registries and that your information is up to date. And that probably provides the highest level of assurance, right? That when the time comes that patients are recruited, you are included at that point, and that the Avidity and the clinical team has best access to most suitable patients, so we can really make goals. So the next one is I want to go a little bit looking into the future. So we have had a couple questions. So the drug delivery mechanism is targeted towards muscle tissue. Maybe can the Avidity team and Dr. Day, can you speculate a little bit if the drug works right in muscle cells? What are the next? What is the thinking of getting it into, let's say, the brain or into other cell types?
Maybe this is something that I start with, and I could have my colleagues also add. In terms of, from an aspect, Avidity, first and foremost, we're an RNA delivery company. We're looking at how we can deliver RNA, which was like the little spiral type structure, to different cells and tissue types. We're starting with skeletal muscle. We can also deliver very effectively to heart. We have research currently going on in precision cardiology, as well as looking at other ways that we can deliver, and that includes things like the CNS. It also includes things like immune cells, but more of that is much earlier in the research process.
Do you have anything else that you would want to add, or Dr. Day?
I mean, I just say that obviously we're very excited to think about how to deal with the entirety of the myotonic dystrophy presentation. And one of the things that we know is that we seem to have very good measures for how to measure the efficacy in muscle. And that is part of the reason that we've chosen that to focus on, is that we can tell that we're having that benefit there. We hope and we believe that we are probably affecting the mechanisms underlying this condition in a way that will benefit the gastrointestinal system, the heart, maybe the immune system, maybe the endocrine system. There's every reason to think that with this approach that we are having benefits across the board there. The question about the central nervous system is a really important one, and one that I know we're all interested in. Everything is interactive here, so that the heart affects the central nervous system. How well you breathe affects how well you sleep, which affects the central nervous system. So it's a complicated issue in terms of actually getting into the central nervous system and seeing a change at the molecular level there. That we'll have to take some additional approaches to, and I'm very excited about that possibility. But I'm also excited at seeing whether or not people see that they have an improvement in stamina, for instance, maybe even an improvement in their daytime sleepiness in some instances, just with the effects that we're seeing with the systemic treatment that we're measuring now with del-desiran.
That's great. I think fabulous statement. So let's do two more things in the interest of time and to be respectful to the to you all. So there was one more question came in with regards to how early access programs would work, and then maybe we can answer that, and then I think it would be really amazing if our community would hear from you all. Maybe we start with Dr. Day and then go to the Avidity team with regards to the importance of registries and being signed up and having the information up to date. That's really, we say it all the time, but I think it would be really beneficial if the community would hear it from you. So we're starting with the early access. Maybe you, Kath?
Yeah, I can start with that. So early access programs, they're different for every company, for every study, even within companies. It is something that we are looking at. Right now, the main focus of the company is to get the Harbor study up and running. We will then turn our focus to thinking about whether or not we can do an early access program. And, it depends on a number of factors, but as Sarah's talked about, urgency is really our number one. And so, we would like to get, first of all, we want to see a successful result from the study. And as soon as that happens, we would like to be able to get as many patients as possible, get access to the drug. And early access is one of the tools that we can utilize to do that. And it's definitely one we're going to be thinking about.
Great, thank you. So let's close maybe with our presenters. Maybe put a few words around the importance of registries.
Yeah, I'm happy to chime in on that again, Andy. I kind of mentioned it earlier, but a number of us have, because it really is important. I mean, we can see this going forward that we have a lot of work left to do in myotonic dystrophy. And the only way that we can really prove the efficacy is to do that with patients. And that's both for natural history studies. We have to define certain elements of what's going on with the underlying condition more precisely in terms of the effects that we measure and in terms of the change over time of those effects. And then come up with ways to measure that so that we can prove that we're actually benefiting patients when we put them on treatments. And the only way we can do all of these clinical trials, both natural history studies and drug trials, is by integrating our work better with the community. So this is a really critical element. We need to work together, and we're excited. We hope that we've excited the community today and are eager to capitalize on that by doing more work together.
Thank you.
I can maybe weigh in on just two additional things, which I know have probably been mentioned already. One of them is the fact that the disease is a multi-systemic, multi-organ system disease, and it's a complex disease that present differently in different patients. And one of the key things to understand that heterogeneity and eventually understand why there's a heterogeneity really all depends on studying in human. And the registry data and the natural history data are key to allow us to get to that kind of granularity. And also, as we have more drugs in development for DM1, it's very helpful for the interventional trial to leverage the data from the registry and for the natural history study, because they provide a foundation as understanding, how many people might have 10-meter walk run more than 10 seconds, how many people maybe progress a year in some of these endpoints. And all of that have a lot of relevance for us to understand how do we assess the impact of a drug if we don't know how naturally the disease will change. So those are some of the reasons why natural history study and registry are so important. And also, just like Andy said, I think getting plugged into the community in that way not only empowers everyone involved, but also maybe help the participant to get information quickly on some of the up and coming trials.
Great. Thank you, Lee. Well, so Lee, do you want to go to the to our very last slide? So we want to we really want to thank the entire Avidity team. We want to thank Dr. Day. We want to thank the community, right, for coming here and sharing the results. And we are all friends, right, so to speak. And going forward, I think we as MDF will do everything we can, right, to facilitate this this exchange. So thank you again to all the presentations and the presenters. And to our audience today, of course, if you like the program, please consider showing your appreciation with a donation. We learned, I think, and we've seen it very clearly, right, that only together we can change the future of this disease. So the donation link is also on our website. And then let me say it one more time. Please, please, please contribute to myotonic dystrophy research. It's no longer just research. And join the Myotonic Dystrophy Family Registry and update your profile. And that is also on the website. So with this, I want to end and thank everyone one more time. And until next time, thank you.